Have you ever been at the liquor store and you're just staring at the shelf and there's tons and tons and tons of bottles just looking at you and you're just like, I know nothing about most of the bottles on this shelf. How the heck am I supposed to buy something when I know nothing about it?
Well, we're going to let you know. In this video, we're going to talk about what we do when we're at the liquor store and have no clue what the bottle is, but we want to walk away with a bottle of whiskey.
It's basically our criteria for blind buying whiskey. Because that's going to happen at some point, anytime in your whiskey journey, but it's kind of interesting to know what exactly you should be looking for on a bottle.
Well, we're going to go through the criteria here of can't talk, buying all the bourbon and rye and everything else that are on those liquor store shelves, and we know nothing about them. So, number one on that list, state of distillation. That is the very first thing we look at, state of distillation. So you should be able to, shameless plug, one of our picks, turn around the bottle for most of the time and look at the back and it'll say distilled in Indiana for this particular one, or distilled in Kentucky, or distilled in Washington, or distilled in Missouri. So we look for that because then we can kind of gauge like, hey, this might be Barton in Kentucky. Might be MGP.
You have no idea. If it says Kentucky, then you
but
don't
it
know.
just kind of, it can give you some ideas of where it possibly could be from. What, 90% of the time Indiana is MGP?
Yes, yes. Most of the time you see something that says distilled in Indiana, that means MGP, which means if you like MGP, you probably like this.
Yep.
I mean, sometimes if it says distilled in Tennessee, or if it's a distilled in Tennessee, Indiana, and Kentucky, like multi-states, that means it's generally going to be a blend of bourbons or whiskeys from those states. So we always just make sure we look at the bottle and we're like, okay, where was this distilled? Like if it's 16 years old and it was distilled in Tennessee, we might be like, okay, well...
Well, she kind of jumped into the second one, is the age. 16 years old, she just said. So we look at the age on it. So as she said, 16, 10, 6, 2, 8, whatever it is.
If it has an age on it, then I look at that. But if it doesn't have an age on it, then what do you like?
If it doesn't have an age, if you see the word Kentucky Straight on here, or not Kentucky, but just straight, you know it's at least 2 years old. So that's really the only thing you can go through with the age. Well, unless you wanted to do math, if they had single barrels and kind of had them on here, has the distill date and bottle date, you can do math and figure out how old it is.
Yep.
So that's how you can kind of figure out some of the ages on these.
Right. It's tough to buy like something that's going to be like 4 years old.
2 years old.
2 years old. Like I see some really cool looking bottles on the shelves sometimes, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What is it? And then it's like some 2 or 3 year old bourbon that.
Yeah, and I think my sweet spot for age is probably about 8 years old for bourbon.
I'm not going to give a sweet spot because I
think it's just a sweet spot where you can get really good bourbon.
I feel like you can anywhere.
Correct.
Like 6.
But if you're blind buying it and you know nothing about it, if it has an 8-year-old age statement versus like a 6, you're probably going to go to that 8.
I would definitely feel safe at 6 years old.
Yes, but in general, I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
If you're blind buying it, you're going to pick up that 8.
No, I'm saying for a blind bottle. Yeah.
Correct.
If it says 8, sure. But I feel safe at 6 too.
Correct.
So.
Then the next thing is probably the first thing people look at is the cost of the bottles.
Sure.
So you're walking through those shelves and you see up top, this says $200 for this bottle. You're going to buy that blindly? Probably not.
No, that does not make any sense.
Probably not.
Don't just blindly buy a $200 bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
Please do not do that.
Yeah, don't do that. You can get in some trouble with that one. But, I mean, if it's a $50 bottle of whiskey, sure, take a chance at it. It could be something that's great. I think we had a video once where we bought a bottle that was recommended by liquor stores. And what did we come across? It was from Total Wine. And it was Barton.
Oh, it was like their...
It was like 1792 bottle and bond, but it was their Total Wine brand. I cannot remember what brand it was.
I can see it in my face, or my eyes right now, but yes.
Anyway, it was really good. It surprised the heck out of us what it was.
Right. It was their own label or whatever they have, but also, if you looked at the label, then you see it was distilled in Kentucky.
Yep.
It was blah, blah, blah. It's this year's old, and then you figure out, whoa, this is literally the same thing as 1792.
Yep. So then next, we have it here, store picks. Whether they're channel picks, and you're probably not going to blind buy channel picks, but store picks at a store you go to.
Yeah. Generally, again, I would still err on the side of caution a little bit with store picks because Sometimes they'll have store picks that are sitting on the shelves for a very, very long time, and there's a reason someone's not buying them. But I would just say look at the label again. If it says distilled in whatever states you like your whiskey from, if it's a certain age, if it's a certain proof that you like, just pay attention to all those things cohesively. Like sometimes there's a finish you might not like, so make sure you pay attention to that with store picks. But I would highly recommend buying store picks because you're generally not going to be disappointed. I would say 99% of the time, store picks that we buy, we're happy with.
Oh yeah,
they're good. We've probably bought handful here and there, but most of the time, we like them.
Next, the penultimate thing here. I gotta get my Formula One talk in there.
You really like to say penultimate.
I do. It's a good word. It's like plethora. It's like a plethora of
I don't
piñatas.
even know what penultimate is.
It's the corner before the last.
Okay. Oh, before we get to that last corner then, before we go rolling around that last corner.
I wasn't going to the last one yet, though.
But you said before we get there. Before we get there, just make sure you hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. If you guys have not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Please subscribe. Please like, leave a comment, hit the bell notification, do all those things. Please. Okay. Now.
Okay.
Move to the penultimate thing.
Proof. We look at proof.
It doesn't usually matter, though.
It doesn't, but, again, blind buying, you're going to look at proof. Are you going to buy that 80 proof thing? Or if there's something on a shelf that's 115 proof, are you going to buy that 115 proof?
I'm going to generally avoid anything that says 80 proof.
I'm going to buy that 115 proof.
I'm going to avoid the 80 proof. Definitely proof is important.
Yeah.
Especially if it's under 90 proof, because you might be like, oh, it could be really young then too. Sometimes. Not saying all, because like obviously Eagle Rare 10 year, but if you're blind buying whiskey on a shelf, 80 proof might be a sign that it's going to be something either bottom shelf or young or whatever.
It could be, it could not be. 10 cup 10 year, for instance, or 10 cup 14.
Oh, yeah,
it's 80 proof, so
it's amazing.
But it's delicious. So
amazing.
It depends, but I am going to err on the cautionary side, and I'm going to get something higher proof than lower proof.
Yep.
So, what do we got last?
All right. Well, the last thing is something we do find ourselves doing
a lot. We do all the time, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Which is why you probably ended up watching our channel. It could be. You never know. You pick up your phone and you're in the store and it's like John Bob Smith's Bourbon Whiskey.
Oh, people want John Bob Smith's Bourbon Whiskey.
I've told them about John Bob Smith's Bourbon Whiskey.
Yeah.
That's my next label. Anyhow, it's like, I don't know anything about John Bob Smith's Bourbon Whiskey. Mm-hmm. So you pick up your phone, you start Googling it, and you're like, John Bob Smith's Bourbon Whiskey, and then you look at, like, Breaking Bourbon. Did they do a review?
Did the Average Drinker do a review?
Did anybody
any
that we
reviews?
Watch, any reviews? Are there any reviews out there? Does anyone else think this is good?
We do that all the time.
All the time.
Because we might not know about the bottle, so we do a quick search. It's like, oh, okay, I'll pick that up.
That's the biggest.
I'm going to leave that on the shelf.
Yeah, I feel like that's the biggest key in blind buying bourbon. It's almost not blind buying it. Like if you find a channel your palate aligns with, or you find someone you like to watch, or you find a reviewer that you agree with, then it definitely helps you when you're like, okay, I'm going to search this. They said this about this bottle. I feel a little safer spending my money on it.
Yep.
So, yeah.
That's what we got for you.
What is your criteria for blind buying bourbon? Because I'm sure you have a criteria.
Do you blind buy bourbon?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure some people don't, especially gets expensive. So let us know in the comments, and that's all we've got for you today. We thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Dara.
I'm Bill.
We'll see you next time right back here on The Average Drinker.